Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, what if I told you that the next world war wasn't going to be some tragic accident, but a planned event? Today, we're diving into a really provocative theory from an online source that argues a huge global conflict isn't just coming, it's actually a necessary step in a massive financial reset.
So, the source we're looking at today makes this incredible claim that a new world war isn't just a possibility, it's actually an inevitable, planned event. And the whole purpose behind it? Well, it's to trigger a complete, total reset of the global financial system.
And this is where it gets, chillingly specific. The theory actually pinpoints the window for this conflict, saying it'll start as early as 2025, but no later than 2030. So why that specific time frame? Well, because according to this theory, a really powerful historical cycle is about to reach its dramatic and, violent conclusion. So how in the world does it get to that date? The whole theory really hinges on one single core idea, a repeating pattern that it calls the 100-year financial cycle. All right, so the central idea is actually pretty simple. It's that global financial systems, well, they aren't permanent. Think of them like a living thing. They have a natural lifespan of roughly 100 years. A birth, a life where they're dominant, and then an inevitable collapse. And the theory claims the evidence for this is just written all over history. I mean, just look at this timeline. You've got the Netherlands in the 17th century, then France, then Great Britain. Each one of these systems dominated for about 100 years before the baton of financial power was passed on to the next one. It's a pretty clear pattern when you lay it out like this. Which, of course, brings us to today, because the theory takes this exact same 100-year pattern and applies it to the current global superpower, the United States. Okay, so the starting pistol for the American century, according to this theory, was fired way back in 1913. Why then? Well, that was the year the U.S. Federal Reserve was created, which basically marked the official birth of the U.S. dollar's global dominance. So remember that date, 1913. It's important. So if you start the clock in 1913, well, you do the math. That means the current system is now over 112 years old. And if you follow that historical pattern we just looked at, this theory argues the US-led system isn't just getting old, it's living on borrowed time. And its collapse is, frankly, long overdue. The theory also says there are these classic kind of end-of-life symptoms for a financial system, and that we're seeing them right now. First up, severe widespread inflation. And second, the massive printing of money that then gets handed out to the public. According to this source, these are the final flashing red warning signs right before a system completely fails. But this theory goes even one step further. It suggests that these 100-year shifts aren't just accidents of history. No, they are allegedly orchestrated by a single, consistent group operating from behind the scenes. So the whole theory is really built on this one premise, that a small, unchanging global elite controls the world's financial systems. It argues that it doesn't really matter which country is the named superpower, this same group always remains in charge. They just, move their center of operations from one nation to the next when the time is right. And this slide lays out the alleged master plan, which was supposedly set in motion over 50 years ago. Step 1, it claims, was in 1971, when the US dollar was taken off the gold standard. That sealed its fate, right there. Then, Step 2, just 1 year later. That same elite supposedly directed the US to open up relations with China, beginning the long, slow process of preparing its successor. And that brings us right to the rise of China, which, according to this theory, was no accident of history at all. Instead, it was the deliberately chosen successor, groomed for the next phase of the global financial system. So, from this viewpoint, China's so-called economic miracle, well, it wasn't a miracle at all. It was the result of a deliberate, decades-long plan where just massive amounts of capital were intentionally funneled into the country, and the goal, to specifically build it up as the world's next great economic engine. So what the theory presents here is basically a clash of two systems. On one side, you have the fading power, the current US-led system, which is all based on debt and a fiat dollar. And on the other side, you've got the rising power, a new BRICS-led system, which is allegedly going to be backed by physical commodities and real gold. And so what's the designated replacement for the US dollar in this new system? Well, the theory is really clear on this one. It's China's Digital Yuan. It argues the Digital Yuan has been developed and positioned for this exact purpose, to step in and become the world's next primary reserve currency. Okay, but how does this massive transfer of power actually happen? I mean, how do you get the entire world to just abandon the US dollar and switch over to a new digital yuan? Well, according to the theory, a peaceful handover? That's just not an option. It's impossible. History apparently shows that these transfers of global power are never smooth. They're always triggered by a massive, violent conflict, by war. And here's the historical precedent the theory points to. Just like World War I and II were the big events that forced the transfer of power from Great Britain over to the United States, it argues that a Third World War is the necessary event to force that final transfer of power from the United States over to a new China-led system. And so we're left with the really unsettling question that this theory puts on the table. Are we just living through the final years of a predictable 100-year-long cycle? A cycle that is now reaching its violent and maybe pre-planned conclusion? To put it another way, is history about to repeat itself?